let me show you a demo of how a typical Clojure program, development would look like. Okay, so and the example that I'm going to show here, I have a database with a single table called the developer. So it has an ID and then it has a GitHub handle. So here the ID one has pointing to my handle, Git, and then 2 is Richiki, 3 is Kannan. And I am going to develop a web endpoint which when I hit this endpoint, it is going to talk to my database, get the GitHub handle, then call the GitHub API and return my name, my followers, and my company and what is the last updated date. So if I put 2, it will be Rich Kiki has 4,729 followers, and if I put 3, it should return contents. So this is the HTTP API that I'm gonna build, and this HTTP API is talking to to database to given an ID. It is retrieving the GitHub handle, and then using the handle, I'm fetching the actual data from some API, and I'm going to return a new data, which is the name, location, followers, and company of the given profile. Okay. So think of like in a typical web application, right? That's what we do. Like we talk to database, fetch something, we talk to some API, fetch something, and then we mesh all the things together and then return as a response to someone else, probably the front end, and front end takes this data and displays something useful. So that's what we're gonna do. And what I'm having here is on my left side is the Clojure file where I'm going to write the output, the actual code. On the right side, what you are seeing is the REPL. Okay, so REPL is kind of a tool using which you can get feedback about your code. For example, I talked about all these things, right? Let's say that I'm going to write an expression, say 1 plus 2. I'm going to evaluate now. On the right side, now you can see the output of the function over here. So by this way, what you can do, like whatever you are writing, you can get a feedback instantly over here. So let's start doing this interactive. This interactive programming is something so special to Clojure. In a typical application, right? Think of like you want to debug something. What you do? You spin up the debugger. That will take some time to compile, and after all this compilation, you log in. Then you press appropriate keys in the in the application, takes to the corresponding page. In that page, you perform some action, and then in the debugger, you put some debug point, and then you figure out all these things. You made a fix, and then you need to try it again. This feedback loop is way high, and hence for some obvious things we will be spending a lot of time. In Clojure, you don't need to do all those things. Like if you are not sure about something, type it, you'll get an output instantly, and that's a feedback loop. Say for example, what will happen if I call plus without any arguments? Is returning 0. If I call with only 1, it is returning 1. So it's kind of like you inside the program itself, you can evaluate and you can see the output. And this is not limited to something trivial like plus 1 or 2. All the database interaction, API interaction, all those things can be done using this way. Okay, so let's get into that the problem that we are going to solve. Okay, so first of all, I need what is the first thing that I need here? I need a function to fetch developer from DB. Okay, so I'm going to create a new function. Let me name this function as fetch developer. I'm gonna put an ID, and then I'm gonna call that in database. I'm using a library called honey equal, which is a library to talk to database. I'm going to query only one record, so I'm using the function query single here, and then I'm going to use my database adapter, which is a Postgres thing, and then I'm going to get the data. So the syntax here is like similar. Like I'm going to put developer /id, and the ID is this. I need to fetch the developer GitHub handle. So it's similar to something like select GitHub handle from developer where ID equal to something. So that's what I have written here, but in a Clojure's way. So I'm done. I created that and I'm sending that to REPL. Now I can play with that example here. I can call fetch developer of 1. It says Tamil Vendan here. If I call 2, it says Rich Hiki. So if you look at, I am done with the function. Implemented a database function which given an ID, it is returning some data. Now I'm done with database interaction. Now I need to call a GitHub profile. Okay, so let me call that function which GitHub profile. Again, that is going to take a GitHub handle and I need an URL to create that. So let me create format https://github.com/users/yes my GitHub handle, just to make sure that I'm doing right. So I'm going to call the function GitHub profile with my name Tamil Vendan. Now it should be written me the full name. Okay, I call the type is Tamil Vendan. Okay, so it is formatted the URL expected. Next thing is, now I have the URL, then I need to make a HTTP call. I already included an HTTP client. So what I'm doing right now, if you look at, I'm going to use the pipeline function or a macro to be precise. So what is going to do, it's going to take the URL and is going to invoke the HTTP client. I'm going to call get. So in the first expression, I'm creating the URL. In the second expression, I'm making the HTTP call. Now again, I'm sending that to REPL. Now if I call the function again, it is going to take some time. And if you look at on my right side, the HTTP status is 200, and inside the body, it is a string. So it is written, the data type which is written by this function is a map, and I'm interested in the body. So I'm going to take the body alone. So now I'm calling the REPL again. If you look at now, I have extracted everything from the body. Now I'm done with this thing, but this representation is a string. But what we need is, we need to serialize to a Clojure data structure. That means we need to serialize this JSON representation to a Clojure data structure. I have a library already imported. Now I'm just calling these are pipeline functions. Like if you are already used to in some Linux or command line, right? Like we have one function, pipes next function, pipe next function. That is exactly what I'm doing out here. So now I am done with that thing. Now if I call this guy, so now the string is serialized into Clojure data structure, which is a map, and the string is the key is a string, and the values is again a string or an integer, depends on what we are looking at. Okay, so it returned all the things which is, there are a lot of things actually. There are followers, there are URL, there is subscriptions URL, ID, email, lot of other things are out there. But what we are interested in, only very few properties. So there is another function called select keys. Basically, select keys, using select keys, we can set only certain keys from a map. I'm just going to say I'm interested in name, location, followers, and then I am more interested in the company as well. All right, so now I executed all those things. Now if I run, maybe let me clear the REPL so that we can see. Now if I run, now you can see only those columns have been retrieved. Now we achieved the second aspect. We have one function that is fetching from database, and we have another function that is fetching from GitHub API. And what we need is a final function which put things together. So let me call it as get developer. I'm putting the ID Here also what my first step is calling the fetch developer, and then we have from the developer again from fetch developer is returning me map. From the map I need to fetch the handle, so I'm going to call developer slash github handle, and you can verify the intermediate steps as well. Like I can call developer of 1, it should show me Tamil Vendan. If I call 2, it's Richiki. 3, it's Kannan. So that now see, look at, I'm interactively validating my statements as well. Like in a typical development, like we put debugger, set all those things, right? Like there is no such dance. I'm writing, evaluating, see everything is. So in order to prevent accidentally, if you're trying, like what we can do, we can wrap it all these things around something called, a command expression where I can fetch, I can have everything inside that. So now those things will be ignored when it is getting compiled. So that's another handy thing. Now I have the get developer function, which is getting me the handle. The next step is calling the fetch GitHub profile. So it will, given an ID, it is going to call all those things, and that's it. So now we have get developer function up and running. So let me validate that as well. So 3, it is returning Kannan. 2 is returning. Everything is working as expected. Now my final step is exposing this as a HTTP API. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm going to write a handler. Think of like a controller method. Okay, I'm just saying get developer handler. It is going to take a request, and the very first step again over here, like if you look at it, it's slash developers, and then we have ID. So I need to retrieve those things. So I'm gonna call from the request, get from the path params, get the ID. Then again, that will be in integers, sorry, string, parse that to integer, call the get developer function, serialize that, serialize that to JSON, and send that as a response. Now I have the handler function. Again, I can test this function using the REPL. I'm going to call the function in my request. I'm going to put path params and the ID 1. Yeah, it's 1. Look at it, is status 200. There is no headers, and the body is again JSON serialized. If I put 1, it is doing all these things. It is rich kiki. So now I have the handler in place. The final step is hooking that into a web server and exposing that as an API. So I'm going to write a router, and this is a function that takes a root where I'm gonna say developers, and then ID, and it's gonna be a get and the handler that I'm interested in, this guy. So that's the root. That's my router, and then I'm going to start the server. Again, that is again another function. Say jetty, and then I'm gonna say this is the handler, or this is a router that you need to use, followed by leave this join thing. That's a bit advanced. So I'm gonna run this in port 8080. So now I have a function that will start a Jetty server. It's a web server. People from Java background may know, but it's a server, which will take the request from the browser and invoke our handlers. And I'm saying it is going to run an 8080. Well, that's it. So now we have the server also running. I defined the server, and we need to start the server. So I'm gonna do, again, I'm going to call the function server. So in order to stop the server, I'm just going to assign that to a var name server. Now I'm going to, let me clear this here. Let me run. So now the server has started. Hopefully on 8080 it should work. 8080, I'm calling it ID3, so it should show condense stuff. Yeah, good, super. So we have Richiki in place, and then we have me as well. So, and if I let's say that I want to add something else, say maybe what we can say something like I like to have some more properties, something like updated it. Here I'm gonna say, let's say use Java time dot offset time. Now basically I'm going to add updated it, and now if I go and refresh the page, you see I've updated it here. It's kind of similar to hot reloading that we have in front-end development. Now it is there in the front. Like what I'm doing here, and I am looking at it's updated at its hyphen. It's kind of tricky, so I'm gonna here I'm changing that to, this case. Once I made the changes, I'm sending that to REPL. Now that my REPL knows everything. If I refresh the page, I should see updated it, updated. So all these things I've done with hardly 50 lines of code, and the key here is all the steps, right? I took one task, split it into small tasks, and each task I added interactively by interactively, sending that to REPL, understanding my validation, validating my understanding. Now everything is working. Then I put all these things together and baked in and created this API. So that's how a typical development in Clojure would look like. And with that, I'm done. So if you have any questions, we can have, and then we can get into the actual hands-on session. Any questions?
Yeah, actually, one question, Daman, on behalf of audience. So, where was the DB declaration that you had?
Which one?
DB.
Which declaration you are talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So DB connection, I'm actually having it in a separate file. Let me open that up. Where I'm saying this, I'm initializing the database. This is the database name, username, password, and other thing. That's it.
Okay.
And this keyword, the library that I'm using, right? Like this honey EQL. So that is translating this Clojure representation into this, this SQL query and running the show.
Okay. So there is a question from Gopinath that is unequal different from Hug SQL?
Yes. So maybe I can show you in the things.
So this is the library that you are developing, right?
Yes. So basically, this is the library. I can share that. Okay, how can I put?
Can put it in chat to everyone.
All right. Super. So
any other question? Gopinath, does that answer your question?
So how do you include dependencies? Like we only saw one file in where you were making the changes, and yeah, from what you explained, that was good and clear. But then if like as a beginner or as a first time audience who is looking into this Clojure programming language, so what does the setup look like? I mean, meaning that apart from the file, what do you need?
That's an excellent question. So that's what Kannan is going to help you get started with. So basically, you need an editor. Okay, and here I'm using Visual Studio Code, and the code should have something called REPL, and here I'm using an extension called Kalva. So that is the REPL, and then you started writing typical .clj file, and you start the REPL. Everything will be work on. That's the setup. And in terms of dependencies and other things, right? Like I'm using something build a tool called tool depths. Okay, where I'm using this Postgres driver similar to Maven POM file or a Gradle file in a Java, or package.json in Node.js. Like similar thing here, depths.adn, where you can put all the open source libraries that you are interacting with here. And then from the actual function, you need to put require. It's similar to the import statements that we have in other languages, and then you just get started. So that's how. So the idea of this demo is to give you a brief idea about how a typical development in Clojure would look like. You are not expected to know everything that I showed here, but this is just give an experience of what it means to do something in Clojure.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you, Tamal.
Tamil, so for updated it, right, you have used the Java function.
Yep.
Yep. But this time, whatever the references that you have made before, right, you have invoked in Java kind itself, like java.time.offset, and then you have put a /now.
Yep.
So this is one other way to use it.
Exactly. So in another way would be something like I can directly import. I can import it here, and then I can come over here, and then I can get rid of this guy. If that will return me the current Java time. So that is also another.
So now is another method, right?
Yes, now is a method, static method in Java offset date time.
That's right. Like, and then you have used /.
Yep.
Okay, what does / here means?
It's a if you want to invoke a static method in Clojure, a Java static method in Clojure, you need to use the /.
Okay.
For example, in Java, you would be calling it something like
dot. Yep.
So here the equivalent representation is this one. You are replacing that with this. So both are same.
Okay. So as per the paradigm, right? Like the first one is the supposed to be the function, right?
Yes.
Here offset date times not the function, right?
No.
Actually, you have to see the whole thing as a single literal.
Okay.
If you put a white space, now it will be treated as this is an argument. When you don't put anything, the function.
It's.
Yeah, the entire thing is treated as a function here.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other question?
So again, Senthil here. So I understand that I see that it's a bit different way of coding here, and I'm being from earlier C and now Java days. Now I see this as a completely different kind of coding, but I'm trying to understand how does it help in, like, I see it as a different, but how is it? How do we see it? What is the benefit of this? I'm trying to understand.
So one benefit here, what I showcased already, is the interactive development. So your development, you will be very much productive in Clojure because in a typical programming setup, right? we do everything by trial and error. We try to explore, and our feedback loop needs to be fast. Here, because of the REPL, the moment I tried, started working on the code, I can get an immediate instant feedback through my thing. That's very first thing. And the second benefit that I'm personally facing is around, there is no ceremony here. Whatever I have written is essential for solving the problem. I'm not playing around with any accidental complexity here. When I say accidental complexity, I'm not putting some inheritance logic, some attribute, some random reflection. There is no magic. Everything is there, straightforward, and depends on where you look for coming from. Some people like framework magic and other things. Some people look straightforward to the point thing, and this is similar to that one. And there is no ceremony out there. And another philosophy that it is teaching you is, write small function just does one thing, and then compose everything together and build a system. And I already gave a talk in the very first Clojure meetup, so that is already available in our YouTube channel, where I demonstrated how I have used Clojure in one of the production project in Ajira, where we developed a complete product for our customer. So if you go to that, if you watch that particular talk end to end, you will get to know about the real benefit of building that system.
Yeah, and Sendil, if your question also from the perspective of what you achieve by changing the syntax, Tamar was telling about a property called home iconicity, right? So your total program is nothing but a Clojure list. So we'll come there in future sessions on what exactly it means and things like that. And there is also a concept called macro. So by having your total program in a consistent syntax and treating a program itself as a data structure of your program. So if you have to have a program that creates a program, all you have to do is you have to create a list in a certain syntax. So it'll give you syntactic abstractions, and it'll let you write concise codes, and it'll let you invent whatever the new control structures that you need. For example, unlike other languages, you can create all the operators from the scratch. For example, if you have a logical operator like and, or, all those things, you'll be able to write it from the scratch. All those power comes from the home iconicity, and which comes from the consistent syntax and macro and concepts like that. So probably once we have a visit of all those things, you'll be able to realize what the syntax adds value to the programming.
Okay, Ganan, thank you. So far, good.
Yeah. So any other questions?
I have shared the video link as well as in the chat. If you go through that, you'll start all those things. But that being said, right, like it's more around. I used to be a skeptic of Clojure for a very long time in my career. So until I started using it, getting a sense out of it from a production project, it took some time to, as you said, it's kind of extremely different from what we used to do in a typical programming language. So just give yourself some time, play with it, watch a lot of talks, as I mentioned earlier, some Richie talks, and particularly to the question that you have asked, listen to the talk that where I had mentioned about my production experience on using Clojure in a project. So if you think everything together, I guess you should get a good feel of what is the benefit is.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dhawan.
Thank you, Dhawan.